Hi, I'm Jess Arce, America's dyslexia expert. And today I want to talk to you, I want to share with you my experience as a person growing up with undiagnosed dyslexia. It doesn't matter if it's diagnosed or undiagnosed, it's still there. We may not know we have it, like I didn't know I was dyslexic as a kid, but I knew all my struggles. So when I was a kid, I was actually labeled as having a learning disability. Well, it wasn't until after I had been tutoring my kids for about 4 months, maybe 3 months, that I realized that my learning disability was dyslexia. Made sense. My 2 kids were diagnosed with dyslexia. My mother was diagnosed with dyslexia. So since dyslexia is hereditary, makes sense what my reading disability was. But like I said, it doesn't really matter whether I had a diagnosis or not. I still had the experiences. So for you parents who maybe don't have dyslexia, don't have these experiences, don't know what your kids are going through, or maybe you are the dyslexic gene, but yours is mild, and so you still can't relate. I'm going to give you a little background about myself. And I have moderate dyslexia, so it's not super severe. It wasn't super extreme. However, it still affected my life. So as a kid, my mother was a public school teacher in New York City, and she decided that she did not want me to go to public school. So she sent me to private school. Now, her reason for not wanting me to go to public school had nothing to do with academics. It was because of her witnessing the cafeteria. I've never asked her what exactly that meant, so maybe in the near future I can interview her and she can talk a bit about her experience as a dyslexic individual and as a parent of a child who had struggles. And she can share what that meant. But anyway, I was fortunate enough to go to public school. And I know I am blessed because, I was fortunate enough to go to private school. And I know I was blessed because my mother was in a financial position to help me. And even more so, my grandparents were in a financial position to help supplement what my mother couldn't cover. So my heart goes out for people who can't afford tutoring or can't afford private school or can't afford to even put the energy into their children and their education. You know, I've experienced, having run my business for years, I've witnessed people who are not as fortunate as I was. And that's one of the reasons why one of my goals in 2023 is to get my service going, where we are going to help out kids who are in juvenile detention, who have dyslexia, diagnosed or undiagnosed, who help them learn how to read so that maybe they don't become a percentage in the prisons. Anyway, that's not today's topic. So my topic today is about my experience. And so as a kid, I remember my oldest memory is going to my pediatrician, and they had you do the eye exam. And you know, when you're younger, the eye exam is shapes, it's squares, triangles, then you move up to images of little kids and sailboats, and then you graduate up to letters. And once you graduate to letters, that's how your eye exam is for the rest of your life. Well, when I was a kid, when I was supposed to graduate up to reading the letters for the eye exam, I couldn't. I could not identify the letters. And so I had to continue to identify the images long after the point when they would usually have people read out the letters. So that was an early indicator that something was delayed. And I don't recall ever having a test done. I don't know how they labeled me having a reading disability, other than maybe the fact that I was in 3rd grade and couldn't read. And maybe they just said, oh, she's got a reading disability because this kid can't read. So their solution was to hold me back. And that was not a good solution, because when dyslexic people struggle, being held back does not give them more time to catch up, which that's what educators think is going to happen. That was the same thing that they said with my daughter. And we don't need more time. We need different instruction. However, that set a light bulb off for my mom that I needed extra help. And so I started working with a tutor. As a side note, she was actually John Lithgow's ex-wife, the actor. He was just up and coming back then. But I don't remember her name, but I'm sure if I looked at Wikipedia, I could find it. And she was such a sweetheart, and she helped me in many ways. She helped me learn to read, and she helped me learn to like books. And I still have a book that she gave me as a child, The Growing Tree. It's a green cover. I think that's the name of the book. Anyway, so back to my experience. So I went to a small private school, and there was all of my classmates moved up to 4th grade except for me. And so everyone knew that I stayed back in 3rd grade. Another side note, if you do end up holding your child back, please, please, please send your child to a different school. Do not keep them in the same school, so that everyone knows that they were held back. Let them have a new experience at a new school. So I was held back, and I watched my classmates walk by me and go to the 4th grade class. Meanwhile, I was still in 3rd grade. And that year, I started having a lot of behavior problems. That was how the only way my, 9-year-old self knew how to respond to the fact that I was not happy with my experience, that I was embarrassed, and so I acted out. And I used to get into fights with the boys. I never got into fights with the girls, but I'd always pick fights with the boys. And because it was private school, the teacher, when I acted up, the teacher was able to remove me from her class, and I got sent to the principal's office every single day in 3rd grade. And I became the principal's errand girl because I literally spent most of 3rd grade sitting outside in the hallway. And so she'd give me jobs to do. So she'd send me with notes to go take to different teachers, because back then they didn't have telephones in the classrooms. So I ended up learning how to read that year thanks to my tutor, and I always had good math skills, so I was able to skip forward to 5th grade. So I've never been in 4th grade, and they learned about dinosaurs that year, so I never learned about dinosaurs until I had my boys, and they taught me everything I never wanted to know about dinosaurs. But so that was my childhood experience with dyslexia. And then as I got older, in high school, I had to work a lot harder, and I used to read the Cliff Notes instead of reading the actual books, like Shakespeare. That was definitely a Cliff Note book. But I pretty much read Cliff Notes for every book that was assigned to me. I hated reading. And I ended up dropping out of high school because I was skipping school a lot, and so my mom told me to either shape up or get a job. So I chose to drop out of high school and get a job. And I got a full-time job, and I started selling futons. And so that didn't last very long. I weighed 110 pounds, and the futons probably weighed more than me. And I hated the job, so I told my mom I wanted to go back to school. So she said she wasn't going to pay for me to go back to school, so I had to pay for myself to go back to school. And so I did, and backing up, before I paid for myself to go back to school, I went to apply to a public alternative school, and they would not accept me. And they said I was not college material, and so I wasn't accepted into the school because basically I wasn't going to help their numbers. And then I ended up going to a public school that was pretty much all dropouts or pregnant teenage girls, and that was not a good fit for me. And I was at that school, I think, one semester, and one of my friends who I had gone to high school with before told me about this private alternative school. So that's where I wanted to go, and my mom said she wouldn't pay for me to go back to school. So I had to pay for myself. And it was an alternative school that I went to in the evenings, and so it was an accelerated program. So at that point, I was working harder to complete high school. I took it more seriously because I had already joined the workforce at 15 and didn't love that. I don't know that kids could do that anymore because, it's hard for kids at 15 to get a job, let alone a full-time job. But this was the 80s, and things were different back then. And so I graduated high school, and I actually graduated high school a year early instead of on time or late because of my accelerated program, and I worked really hard to finish, and so we moved along quicker. And so then I actually went away to college in California, and I went to Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising because I took a class in high school, fashion design class, and I really enjoyed it. And so that was what I went to college for initially. Didn't really like the industry. I became an assistant designer, and it was very cutthroat, and I didn't feel like I was as good of an artist as a lot of the other students either. So I left that school, and I ended up at Pasadena City College, which I loved. But I still struggled academically. I struggled a lot with math and science, and I did great in my social studies and psychology classes and writing classes because I don't have dysgraphia. I am a pretty good writer. So as long as I don't have to read too much or reread what I wrote too often, it's something that I enjoy doing. And so I went there for a couple of years, but I did change colleges a lot, and I never got my math or my science credits because it's just my brain did not work that way. And so that's pretty much the journey I had growing up. And so I think one of the good things that comes out of being dyslexic is we learn to be more resilient. We learn to work harder because we realize we have to work harder. And so dyslexic people tend to be successful at what they focus on because of the fact that we've had to work harder when we were younger. And my next video will be about my life as an entrepreneur. I am currently inside my vacation rental unit, which is one of my husband and my entrepreneurial endeavors. And I would love to keep talking about it here. However, we have a guest that's scheduled to check in any minute now. So I probably should be moving along. But that'll be my next video. See you later.